Welcome into the Customer Edge. I'm Butch Stearns of the Pulse Network. On this show, we are talking about marketing technology, what you need to win. And more specifically, we are talking about building a next generation marketing foundation. And under that topic, time now to focus on the technology side of that. And to do that, we bring in Bernard Chung and David Raab. Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Fine. How are you, Butch?
Excellent. So, David, let's start with you. You are the principal of Raab Associates, Inc. that you can find at raabassociatesinc.com. You're an analyst, an author, and consultant, and longtime marketer. At Raab Associates, you help marketers select the best marketing technologies and service vendors. Why are you so passionate when it comes to this subject, David, marketing technology?
Well, Butch, I've been a marketer for more years than I care to admit. And honestly, the marketing technology landscape has just gotten increasingly challenging for marketers, for my people that I identify with the most. And I really feel it's very important that they get all the help they can, because we all as marketers really need it. It's a tough business to be in, but there's tremendous opportunity if it's done right. So we want to make sure that everybody's on the right side of that curve.
Well, Bernard, there's many reasons why we're glad to have David here, but when you look at the subject, marketing technology, what you need to win, and you think about David's experience, in a lot of ways, he's the perfect guest to have on at this time, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're lucky to have him. So welcome to the show, David. And, CMOs, lots of CMOs have big aspirations when it comes to being able to connect and better engage with today's target audiences. However, the reality is that many CMOs fall short of their aspiration. So, in fact, I was looking at a CMO Insight research that was done by IBM, and they report that very few CMOs have successfully implemented the key components for digital marketing strategies. In fact, only 16% report that they are able to have an integrated multi-channel points across both physical and online channels, and only 13% report that they're able to leverage advanced analytics to gain key insights across those channels. So, David, why such a low implementation rate, and what are some of the issues and challenges that marketing organizations face when it comes to today's technology?
Well, those numbers are not at all surprising. I hope everybody realizes that, and marketers out there who are not in that elite 13 or 16% shouldn't feel bad. You're in the vast majority. And people have done it because it's hard, all right, and because it's new. I mean, a lot of the technologies we deal with weren't even around 3-5 years ago. So there's this constant turmoil in the marketing technology world that everyone is just, sort of racing to keep up with. And the complexity of it just keeps expanding. There's always another piece, and the old ones don't go away. So we just keep adding layer upon layer upon layer, which just makes it incredibly difficult because we really haven't absorbed the earlier layers before we, now have to add a new one. So people haven't done it because it's really hard.
Yeah. The ability for the technology to integrate. What are your thoughts on that?
All right, and the integration really is the key, and it really is, as you say, driven by those customer expectations. Customers, they just think it's easy. It really isn't. We know it isn't because we live it, but the customers are like, well, golly, why can't you just know magically what I've done on the website now that I'm talking to you on the phone or in the store? Because, I know that some people can do that, and I just assume that every company can. So there's this huge expectation of what companies will be able to do, because in certain fields, the consumers are really used to it. So in terms of why we don't make that happen, it's marketers are relying upon IT, and IT itself doesn't necessarily understand how to do it. We can easily buy individual solutions. We can buy a website, we can buy a call center, we can buy an email system, but integrating the data behind that to coordinate those customer treatments is really difficult. And frankly, that technology hasn't kept pace with the technology that actually manages those interactions sort of at the end point or the touch points with the customers. So there's this need to build this platform, this foundation that we're talking about today, to pull everything together both at the data level and at the treatment decision-making level, that we're just beginning as marketers to kind of get our head around, even though we've been talking about it for years.
Right, right. And I think there's new technologies that are popping up everywhere. Like almost every month or every week, there's something new that's coming to market. In the areas of wearable technologies and intelligent home appliances, there are a few examples that I've seen personally. But what are some of the other technology areas that marketers need to pay attention from your perspective?
Well, I think that marketers they really need to pay attention to the things that guide their customer treatments. Marketers need to pay attention to things that tell them more about their customers. So there's a lot of social listening technologies, for example, that really give us better insight into what individuals are thinking, and that can be a little creepy, so you have to be careful. You can't, let people think that you're spying on them. But also just letting people know sort of what's happening in general out in the marketplace, or what the culture or what their community is talking about, which is much less creepy. So that's a really critical kind of technology that we have to be aware of. I think we have to be aware of technologies that keep track of location, where somebody is, and again, not to spy on them and not to be creepy about it, but to react appropriately, to the weather that they're in, to the traffic that they're in, to all the things that are going on around them that impact what's the right thing to do for them. As long as it's a service, as long as it's something that's useful for them, then they think, wow, this company is great. It really is helping me out, not, oh my God, these guys, where are they? Looking over my shoulder to see, how it is they know what I'm up to. So there's a fine line, but that's really important. There's a lot of, voice recognition and all these recommendations that based on past behavior. There's a lot of cool stuff that goes on that all helps, that consumers are used to, and that helps us do a better job as marketers of meeting their needs. Marketing is ultimately about meeting the needs of the consumers.
Yeah, absolutely agree about your comment about being able to balance the privacy with personalization capabilities. But when it comes to these technologies, I think it's beneficial for marketers and CMOs to really pair up with their IT counterparts in both evaluating and implementing and developing strategies around technologies. But what are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, yeah, they're your new best friend, the IT guys, if you're a marketer. The good news is they know that they need to be your new best friend as well, because they look at the budgets and they see all the reports and say, oh, marketing's going to spend a lot of budget. So, and they're very much aware in IT that spending can happen outside of IT. Mm-hmm. So they really know that if they are rigid or obstacles or bad in some fashion that is not responsive to marketing's need, the marketing can just go out and buy some cloud-based system and plug it in and run it on their iPad through a wireless network and not even tell marketing or tell IT that it exists, which they really don't want to have happen for very sound reasons like data security and integration. And believe me, I'm not recommending anyone do that. That would be a really big mistake, to go out to do an end run around IT. But IT knows that there's a danger of doing that. So how do you work with those guys? Well, you have to, again, recognize that they need to be educated, that there are things that you as a marketer know that they don't know. They understand some things about their business if they're good IT people, but they don't understand everything. And there are, again, trends and things that are going on that have changed that they need to be educated about, and also recognize that they know things that you don't, and they care about things that you just take for granted that actually aren't so easy to make happen. So there's a kind of a dual mutual respect more than anything else. But start with with the explaining of the business needs, and then really get into understanding, okay, this is what I want to do, and then work with IT to discuss, okay, what do I need to have available to make that happen? What kind of data do I need to make good recommendations to my clients? What kind of processing? What kind of technologies do I need? What kind of outputs do I need? Where am I going to deliver these messages? Just sort of walk through the process and then the requirements that jump out of that process. So that they kind of work with you. It's not get too corny, but it is in fact a joint sort of progression that you want to go through hand in hand, not necessarily tripping through the flowers, but definitely working together to mutually build up this understanding that neither of you are going to generate for themselves. So, and be careful. Sometimes IT guys want to be helpful and they jump to a conclusion. That's a real common thing with IT. Oh, I found the solution for you. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But, hold on, guys. Let's first make sure we really look at all the options and understand everything before you just jump to the conclusion.
So, David, what's important when it comes to evaluating marketing technologies?
Well, there are a lot of things that are important, actually. I think that that what marketers need to recognize is that there are so many choices out there that they kind of have to prioritize. And they really need to think about things that are strategic, which means what's going to be in that backbone and that foundation that we keep talking about here. So how am I going to integrate my data is really important. How am I going to associate identities across different channels where people have, an email address here and a phone number there and a social media handle there. Because that's really sort of the key here is to coordinate those customer treatments. And you can't do that unless you can do the identity association. They have to look at the more technical aspects of the technology, like, can it support the data volume that I need? Can it support the different kinds of data? Because there's going to be structured data and unstructured data and text and this and that. And it's going to change, and there's going to be a new one tomorrow. You're going to have to incorporate some cool kind of video that you never even worried about before, and all these things. You don't know what they're going to be, so you need flexibility. Is a really critical requirement. You have to think about things that can happen in real time, because it's increasingly important to react in real time as well as traditional batch. So there are just, a lot of different issues that have to come up, and this comes back to what we were talking earlier about getting your IT guys on board as well to make sure that they are going to give their perspectives for some things that you might not have thought about.
We talked about earlier in this segment that things change all the time. There's new technology that come up all the time. So the solutions that marketers have today may not be adequate tomorrow as well, right?
Absolutely right. That's why that flexibility and kind of having strong roots, if you will, that you can build on, because you don't know exactly which way the thing is going to go, but you know that it has to be strong enough. Your foundation has to be strong enough to handle whichever direction it ends up leaning in. Critical.
Right.
You are watching The Customer Edge. I'm Butch Stearns from the Pulse Network. We're talking with David Raab of RaabAssociatesInc.com. Bernard Chung of SAP is alongside. David, you and Bernard and Raab Associates and SAP have been working on a gap analysis tool. Bernard and I are going to talk a little bit more about this a little bit later. But let's talk about that gap analysis tool. Interested in your perspectives, because this is going to help marketers identify the right marketing technologies they need to focus on based on their business objectives, correct?
Yes, that's exactly the goal. And again, talking about just how many options people have, the purpose of the gap analysis tool was to kind of help people to step back a little and not worry about the specific details of this thing versus that thing, but kind of assess overall where are my strategic strengths and weaknesses. So where do I sort of need to focus my attention to build that longer term foundation for my future growth. And what we found in developing the tool was there were a relatively small number of questions that I as a consultant would typically have asked in person, but we were able to make that sort of productized, put me in a little box, and ask them and come up with at least what would be reasonable first order kind of answers to those things. So we think, or at least I think, there's a lot of value to it. I'm very excited about it.
Well, David, thank you very much for being on the show. I thought it was a great conversation and appreciate your time.
Bernard, my pleasure.
Yes, and thank you very much, David. David Raab of RaabAssociatesInc.com. Bernard and I will talk more about the gap analysis tool coming up. You are watching The Customer Edge. We thank you for being part of this discussion. We thank you for being part of the community. And again, you are watching The Customer Edge.